Hi everyone, my name is Norman and today I want to show you how to knit the stockinette stitch. The stockinette stitch is probably the most popular knitting pattern. No matter if you buy a nice cashmere pullover or some socks, chances are very high those were knit in the stockinette stitch. It's very easy to knit and perfect for knitting beginners and their first project. At the end of this video, I'm also going to show you the best cast on and cast off techniques for the stockinette stitch. And I'm also going to show you how to prevent curling. So let's dive right into it. I prepared a little swatch for you here. This is how the stockinette stitch looks like. Very smooth. And it's perfect to really show off the quality of a good yarn. So let's show you how to get there. You will need some yarn and 2 needles. For beginners, I recommend single pointed bamboo needles as they're probably the easiest to knit. But if you don't have these at hand, just pick the ones you got as long as they match the bulk of your yarn, so check the label. First, cast on some stitches. For the stockinette stitch, you can cast on an even or an odd number of stitches. It really does not matter. Most other patterns require you to cast on a certain number of stitches, but for the stockinette stitch, you are free to choose. So once you cast on a couple of stitches, we can begin with our first row. The stockinette stitch is created by alternating knit stitch rows with purl stitch rows. And we will begin with a knit row. So what you have to do is you have to knit every single stitch like I showed you in the previous video. Knit every single stitch until you reach the end of your row. So 3 more stitches and we finished the very first row. Now you have to turn the work. And now you have to bring the yarn to the front if it isn't already there. And from here you have to purl every stitch. So we purl every stitch. Every stitch is a purl stitch. And it's really that easy. For the stockinette stitch, you just have to alternate purl and knit rows. And it doesn't matter if you start with a knit or a purl row, you just have to switch between the 2 rows. So then once you finish the purl row, you turn the worker again, bring the working yarn to the back, and then you knit every single stitch. Another way to describe the stockinette stitch pattern is you have to knit every stitch the way they appear. So we are in a knit row, so every stitch is a knit stitch. See these little V's? That's a knit stitch. And if we turn the work, purl stitches have these little bumps here. And if you see a bump, you have to purl, and if you see the little V, you have to knit. It's maybe easier to remember than whether you just knit it or purl. Just switch between those 2 stitches and knit every stitch the way it appears. Once you knitted a couple of rows in the stockinette stitch, you will be able to see the pattern. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? But here's one problem, and you can already see it as well. Stockinette stitch tends to curl at the sides. If you look at my little swatch here, you can see that the edges really curl in. There's an easy way to prevent this, and I'm going to show you how. If you want to prevent your stockinette stitch from curling in at the sides, you need to add a little edge. Knitters call this selvage. For example, if you want to knit a scarf or something like that, you don't want your edges to curl in like this. The easiest way for beginners is adding 2 knit stitches on either side of your work to create a nice little garter stitch edge. So in the knit row, you have to knit across all stitches as usual, but in the purl row, you have to knit the first 2 stitches. I'm going to show you. So this is the purl row, you can see, purl stitches, and the first 2 stitches are knit stitches, and then you purl all stitches again until you reach the end of your row. So we are at the last 2 stitches here, and now you have to knit these, and that's the way you create this nice little garter stitch edge, and it will prevent your work from curling in. It probably will still curl a tiny bit. I mean, you can see this isn't blocked or anything, it still curls a little bit, but not as much as before. But here's the thing, I personally don't believe the stockinette stitch is the most beautiful pattern for scarves, but it's perfect for pullovers. But you don't knit a pullover, you're actually knitting the front and the back, and then you're joining the 2 pieces together. And when you do that, the seam will sort of stretch things out, so it isn't actually a problem. And if you're knitting socks, which are knitted in the round, again, curling won't be a problem because the curling or the round is actually part of the whole idea. Some people might wonder how you knit the stockinette stitch in the round. It's probably a more advanced technique, and most beginners probably don't want to start knitting in the round because as you can see, that's 5 needles you need to master at the same time. But the stockinette stitch in the round is actually easier than if you're knitting flat, because in the round you just have to knit every single stitch and you achieve the stockinette stitch. This is a little mushroom I'm currently knitting, and the stem is knitted in stockinette stitch on admittedly very, very fine needles, but I knitted every single stitch here. Okay, there are a couple of increases here, but this is the stockinette stitch in the round. Last but not least, let's talk about the cast off. Once you reach the end of your work, you need to cast off the stitches so they don't unravel. And for the stockinette stitch, the standard cast off I showed you in the previous video is perfectly fine. You don't need any stretchy or special cast off technique at all. You can bind off just the way I showed you, and this is how it will look like, and I think it's quite beautiful, and you really don't need more stretchiness in your work. Just cast off the standard way. I hope I was able to show you how to knit the stockinette stitch. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe my channel if you want to see more of me. And see you in the next video. Happy knitting!